Tom Walker didn't like drawing attention to himself. After 12 years as a city paramedic, he'd seen what real emergencies looked like: chaos, pain, panic. So when he moved into his modest 2-story home on Wild Fern Lane with his wife and 2 kids, all he wanted was peace. A place where the loudest sound at night was the breeze tapping against his mailbox. For the first few years, that's exactly what he had. The neighborhood was quiet. The kids rode bikes together, and the HOA mostly handled trash day reminders and lawn maintenance updates. But things changed the day Karen Barnes was elected HOA president. Karen wasn't from the neighborhood originally. She moved in after her divorce, into the biggest house on the street, 4 bedrooms, a backyard garden, and a brick mailbox that looked like it had been stolen from a governor's estate. She joined the HOA the following month, and within 6 weeks, she'd rewritten half the guidelines. The first change: no street parking after 10 p.m. The second: lawn inspections weekly. But what really started everything was the fire lane. Tom's home sat at the edge of a narrow cul-de-sac, where a bright red-painted curb wrapped around the corner. It had been designated a fire lane back when the community was built. No parking, no exceptions. Every neighbor knew this, especially Tom, whose job depended on getting emergency vehicles in and out without delay. But Karen didn't care. Her silver Lexus appeared parked against the red curb, more and more often, first for a few minutes, then for hours, then entire nights. Sometimes she double-parked, using the fire lane like her private driveway. At first, Tom thought it was a mistake. So one afternoon he knocked on her door. She opened it with a practiced smile, phone in one hand, a tablet in the other. "Yes." Tom gestured toward the street. "Just wanted to mention your car's in the fire lane. If there's ever an emergency, a truck won't be able to get through." She didn't look at the street. "I'm aware. It's just that I work in EMS. We've had delays before in neighborhoods like this. Seconds really count." Karen's smile widened, condescending now. "You're welcome to call the HOA if you think it's a problem. Aren't you the HOA?" "Exactly." She closed the door. Tom stood there for a moment, stunned. It wasn't just her words, it was the tone. Like he was the one being unreasonable. The next morning, Tom found a yellow slip taped to his door. "Notice: a violation, hedges extend beyond allowable height, code 4.3a. Must be trimmed within 72 hours. Noncompliance may result in $150 daily fine." Tom stared at it, then looked at the hedges. They hadn't grown an inch in months. He'd trimmed them last weekend, but still, he trimmed them again. 3 days later, another notice: trash bins visible from the street, code 2.1b. He'd taken them out an hour early. Then another: unapproved. Window decorations. His daughter had taped a small paper rainbow to her bedroom window for Pride Month. The pattern was clear. He had crossed Karen, and now she was coming after him. He began documenting everything. He took photos of the fire lane with her car in it, complete with date and timestamps. He sent emails to the HOA's general inbox. No reply. At the next board meeting, he raised the issue publicly. "We've got safety regulations being ignored. That fire lane is blocked almost every night. I've submitted photos." Karen adjusted her reading glasses and peered over her clipboard. "Mr. Walker, you've received multiple violation notices in recent weeks. Perhaps you should focus on bringing your own property into compliance before worrying about others." The room went quiet. Tom felt heat rise in his chest. But he said nothing. After the meeting, one of his neighbors, Jason, approached him quietly. "She's doing the same to us. I got a $200 fine for having a basketball hoop on my driveway." That night, Tom stood at his living room window, watching Karen's Lexus idle beside the fire lane again. Her engine was off, her windows up. A fire lane wasn't a suggestion, it was a lifeline, and she'd turned it into her personal parking spot. Tom exhaled slowly and said out loud, "To no one in particular, she's playing games with things that aren't games." He didn't know it yet, but that fire lane was about to test everything he believed in, because soon, it wouldn't be his house that caught fire, it would be hers. For the next 2 weeks, Tom kept his head down. He followed every rule to the letter. He measured his lawn with a ruler. He checked his trash bin placement twice before garbage day. He even took down the string lights on his patio after a vague HOA bulletin claimed excessive outdoor lighting violated community aesthetics. But the violation slips kept coming. One morning, he found a new one stuck under his windshield wiper. Unregistered vehicle in driveway overnight. Code 5.8C. It was his wife's SUV. Fully registered, fully insured, parked in the same spot it had been for 3 years. His wife, Elena, sighed. Is this about the fire lane again? Tom nodded. She's not letting it go. Elena glanced at their daughter, Ava, coloring at the kitchen table. Maybe you shouldn't either. Tom looked down at his coffee, then at the stack of violation notices he'd been filing in a drawer. A quiet, heavy thought settled in. If Karen could do this to him, a licensed EMT, a homeowner in good standing, what was she doing to everyone else? The answer came at the next HOA board meeting. The community center's folding chairs were full. It wasn't normal, most HOA meetings were barely attended, but word had spread. Karen had mailed 16 separate violations across the block that month alone. Jason, from across the street, spoke first. I got cited for using the wrong shade of beige on my trim. Beige. How many shades can there even be? An older woman raised her hand. She said my wind chimes are a noise disturbance. They're bamboo, they barely move. Tom stood, slowly, holding a folder. I've documented her car parked in the fire lane 15 different times over 2 months. I sent it to the HOA email. I've got timestamps, GPS data. I've reported it to the fire department. And in response, I've received, he held up the folder, thick with paper, this. Karen didn't flinch. She adjusted her blouse and took the microphone. This board's responsibility is to maintain the safety, beauty, and order of Wild Fern Lane. It's clear that a few individuals here are more interested in stirring discontent than following community rules. Tom stepped closer to the podium. No one's above safety. Karen, if an ambulance or a fire truck needed to turn onto our street, your car, your personal parking spot, is the bottleneck. She laughed lightly, like he was being ridiculous. And if there's a fire, I assume we'll all move our cars. What are the odds of that happening anyway? Murmurs filled the room. Tom didn't laugh. What are the odds you'll get a second chance when someone's life is on the line? Karen tapped her gavel and closed the meeting early. Outside the center, Jason walked with Tom to the parking lot. You think she's actually going to change? Tom shook his head. No, she thinks she's untouchable. But I'm not letting it go. The next day, a new sign appeared on Tom's lawn. Property under investigation. HOA code violations. PANDIN. The words were bold, in red block print. It wasn't just embarrassing, it looked official, like some kind of public health hazard. Elena was livid. She's trying to humiliate us in front of the neighborhood. Tom took the sign down and placed it gently on the porch. Then he opened his laptop. He created a digital folder titled HOA Misconduct, Wild Fern Lane. Inside it, he placed every photo of her car in the fire lane, every scanned violation slip, every ignored email, every meeting transcript he could find. And then he added a document titled HOA Bylaw Amendment. Emergency Access Clause. Tom had remembered something months ago. There was an opportunity to submit bylaw revisions. Most people ignored it. Karen had submitted 4, but so had he. Quietly, without fanfare, it had passed by default. When no objections were raised, the clause read, in the event a board member is found to endanger community safety through willful negligence, they may be subject to removal by a majority board vote, pending documented evidence. It had never been used, but now Tom had everything he needed. He leaned back in his chair and exhaled slowly. The fire lane, the violations, the intimidation, it all came down to one thing: control. Karen controlled through fear, but Tom wasn't afraid anymore. He knew what fear really looked like, and if she kept pushing, he'd make sure she found out too. Tom tried one last time. It was a Tuesday morning, just after the trash truck rolled down the lane. Karen's Lexus was parked smack in the middle of the red fire lane again, engine still warm. Tom spotted her walking back from her morning jog, tracksuit, earbuds in, clipboard under her arm. He met her near the mailbox cluster. Karen, we've talked about this. I've filed the reports. I've got photos. If there's an emergency, this could cost someone their life. She didn't stop walking. She kept her eyes forward and pulled a single earbud out. Tom, you're beginning to sound obsessed. This isn't personal, he replied. It's about safety. Fire crews need that lane clear. That's when she turned to face him, for real this time. Her expression was tight, controlled, but simmering. You know what I think? I think you're hiding behind that uniform of yours, pretending to be the moral center of this community. You think the rules apply to everyone but you. Well, guess what? I enforce them. Except the one you're breaking every day. Karen smiled, slow and smug. Then call the fire department. Report me. See where that gets you. Tom didn't respond. He had already done that twice. The first time, the city acknowledged receipt. The second time, he got a boilerplate response. Concern forwarded to HOA leadership. He wasn't sure what bothered him more, the car in the lane, or the system that let her get away with it as she walked off. Karen tossed a parting shot over her shoulder. You'd better hope there's never a fire, Tom, especially at your house. That stopped him. It wasn't a threat, not exactly. It was worse. It was arrogance. A statement made by someone who believed bad things only happened to other people. Tom stood there for a full minute after she disappeared into her house. The morning sun beat down. Birds chirped. Sprinklers ticked in sync. The neighborhood looked so normal. Later that evening, Alina found Tom on the back deck, going over documents again. Still working on the HOA file. She asked. Tom didn't look up. I'm compiling everything. Just in case, Alina pulled up a chair beside him. You think it's going to come to that? Tom hesitated. Karen's not going to stop. And if something goes wrong, if someone gets hurt, I won't be able to live with myself knowing I didn't push harder. She reached for his hand. You've done more than enough. Tom shook his head. Not yet. That Friday, just before sunset, Tom heard a knock on the door. It was Jason, holding a beer and looking rattled. You got a minute? They sat on the porch. Jason glanced around, lowered his voice. Karen just told my wife we're getting cited for unapproved roofing material. We reshingled last year, used the exact color in the manual. She's doubling down, Tom said. Jason nodded. She told my son to remove his basketball hoop, said it was a distraction to the neighborhood's visual harmony. It's attached to our garage. She's trying to squeeze everyone. Jason took a slow sip of beer. She's going to push until someone breaks. Either she backs down, or someone snaps. Tom looked out over the street. The fire lane glowed faintly red in the fading light. Karen's Lexus was there again, like a piece of bad art no one could take down. 3 days later, something shifted. It was small, quiet, but deliberate. Karen called a special board meeting with 24 hours notice, violating the standard 72-hour requirement. At that meeting, she introduced a motion to change the emergency contact protocol for the neighborhood. Instead of calling city services directly, residents would now be instructed to report all non-life-threatening emergencies to the HOA first, where Karen would determine the appropriate response. Tom wasn't even at the meeting. He found out through Jason. He read the notice 3 times before folding it into his back pocket. She wants to be the gatekeeper for emergencies, Tom muttered. She's not just enforcing the rules anymore. She's rewriting them to serve herself. Alina watched his expression harden. What are you going to do? He stood and walked toward the hallway, where his uniform hung ready. Wait, he stopped. I'm not going to do anything. Unless she gives me a reason. The next day, the reason would come. And it wouldn't be at Tom's house. It would be at Karen's. It happened on a Sunday. The temperature hit 102 degrees by mid-afternoon. The kind of dry heat that made the pavement shimmer and sucked the moisture out of everything. Tom was off duty, sitting in his garage with a wrench in one hand and a half-finished glass of iced tea in the other. His kids were inside playing Uno. Alina was folding laundry. Upstairs, that's when he smelled it. Smoke, not the faint kind from a backyard grill, but thick, oily smoke. Acrid and rising. He stepped outside, looked right, nothing. Looked left, there. It was a gray column drifting up from the side of Karen's house. His instincts kicked in before his thoughts did. He bolted down the driveway, past the fire lane where of course her Lexus was parked in the same illegal spot. No one else was outside yet. He sprinted toward her house, spotting flames licking the base of a wooden privacy trellis near her backyard. By the time he reached the side yard, the source was obvious. Her propane grill, still turned on, had tipped against dry hedges. The bushes were crackling now, fire crawling up them like it had been waiting for the invitation. Tom didn't even knock. He pounded on her door. Karen, fire. You need to get out. No answer. He checked the handle. Locked. He yelled again. Karen. She finally appeared from upstairs, through a second-story window. What's going on? Your grill started a fire. You need to evacuate. That got her attention. Within seconds, she was down the stairs and out the front door, barefoot and, panicked, call someone. Already did. Tom had dialed 911 the moment he saw the flames. He ran back toward the street, scanning for the fire truck. Sirens were audible now. Close. That's when his stomach dropped. The truck didn't turn onto Wildfern Lane, it kept going. He ran toward the corner, waving his arms trying to catch their attention. Then he saw why they missed the turn. Lexus was still parked in the fire lane. But worse, it was at the corner curve, right where the engine needed to swing wide to make the turn. The truck had no room. The sirens faded. They were circling around, forced to reroute. Seconds ticked by. Tom sprinted back toward the house, where the fire had now spread across the wooden deck. He grabbed Karen's garden hose, turned the nozzle, and tried to suppress the flames, but the pressure was weak, barely a stream. It's not strong enough, he yelled to her. Karen stood on the curb, frozen. Why aren't they here yet? Because your damn car blocked them. She blinked, stunned. But I always park there. He didn't have time to argue. 2 more minutes passed. The fire was now crawling up the back siding. The upstairs window cracked with heat. Tom heard popping glass, then finally sirens again. The fire engine appeared at the far end of the street, rumbling down from the opposite direction. They'd had to take a longer route through a different access road by the time the fire crew unrolled their hoses. The flames had reached the attic. The firefighters worked fast. They contained it, but not before it consumed the upper floor and most of the master bedroom. Smoke damage ruined nearly everything else. Karen stood watching, barefoot on the curb. Mascara streaked down her cheeks. Silent. Neighbors emerged slowly from their homes, watching the spectacle unfold. No one said a word. Tom stayed until the last ember was put out. Then one of the firefighters walked over to him. You live here? Yeah, next street down. That car, he nodded toward the Lexus, now being loaded onto a tow truck, blocked us. Could have cost us time. Lucky we got to it when we did. Tom nodded. He didn't say what he was thinking. It already had. As the sun set, and smoke drifted through the neighborhood like a ghost, Tom returned to his porch. He was covered in soot, his hands scraped, his throat dry. Alina came out with a wet towel and a bottle of water. Is she okay? Tom took a long sip. Physically, yeah, but everything she built, everything she thought, made her untouchable, gone. She sat beside him. You think she gets it now? He looked toward the blackened shell of Karen's house. Fire crews wrapping up. I don't think she has a choice. Karen sat on the curb for almost an hour after the flames were out. She didn't cry. Not in front of everyone. Not even when the fire chief confirmed the upstairs was a total loss. She just sat there staring at her house, legs shaking, clutching her phone like a lifeline. The Lexus was gone. Towed for obstructing emergency access. Ironically, it was probably the only thing not burned in the fire. Tom watched the flatbed truck roll off with it, sirens long faded, smoke still drifting faintly from Karen's roof. He said nothing, neither did the neighbors. A few hovered on driveways, a few leaned on mailboxes. No one offered her a ride. Number 1 offered her water. No one asked if she was okay, because everyone already knew the answer. The next morning, Karen was back walking the perimeter of her home, phone held up, filming damage. She wore oversized sunglasses and spoke in a flat, almost rehearsed tone as she narrated to the camera. Complete negligence by emergency services. Unprofessional conduct. Delay in response. Possible grounds for legal action. Tom heard her from across the street. He was watering his lawn when she spotted him. She marched over, heels clacking against the pavement, her phone still recording. I'd like a word. Tom didn't stop spraying the hose. Make it quick. The fire truck was late. You saw it. Everyone saw it. That delay cost me thousands in property damage, because they had to reroute because they weren't prepared. He turned to face her. Double quotes. No, because your car was in the fire lane. Again, and they couldn't make the corner. Karen's lips tightened. She stopped recording, lowering the phone slowly. I'll be filing a formal complaint with the city, and I'll be reporting you as well for harassment, targeting, and defamation. Tom blinked. You're serious, dead serious. You almost burned down your house because you broke a safety rule. And now you're blaming everyone, but yourself. You've had it out for me since the beginning. He stepped closer, voice calm but deliberate. I tried to warn you. I filed reports. I spoke at meetings. I took pictures. You ignored every one of them. You abused your position, humiliated half this neighborhood, and created a situation that could have killed someone. Karen's face flushed. I'll see you at the board meeting. Looking forward to it. 2 days later, the HOA meeting was standing room only. Karen entered wearing a black blazer, arm in a sling, a packet of papers clutched to her chest. The board sat at the front table, 6 members, including 2 who had privately thanked Tom for speaking up after the fire. Karen took the mic first. Ladies and gentlemen, this community has suffered a crisis, a dangerous fire, property loss, and a failure of emergency services. I've filed complaints with the city. I demand a full investigation. She held up her packet. Dozens of pages. This is proof of systematic targeting. I've been singled out unfairly by a neighbor with a vendetta and a history of undermining this board. All eyes turned to Tom. He stood slowly and approached the podium. No folder. No theatrics. Just words. This isn't about me. It's about leadership. Karen parked in a fire lane for months. She received multiple reminders. She used her position to silence dissent. The fire that damaged her house wasn't bad luck, it was inevitable. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a single document. This is a bylaw amendment that passed earlier this year, an amendment Karen herself signed off on. It states that any board member who endangers community safety through willful negligence can be removed with a majority vote. Gasps rippled through the room. Karen's mouth opened, then closed. She hadn't seen this coming. We've documented everything. Tom continued. The fire marshal's report confirms her grill was left unattended. Emergency response logs show delay caused by an obstructed fire lane. And I have emails timestamped showing my reports being ignored. One board member, Lisa, raised her hand. Let's vote. Karen stood frozen. You can't be serious. Another hand went up, then another, then another. Then another. 6, in total, unanimous. Karen Barnes was removed from her position effective immediately. She stared around the room, waiting for someone to object. No one did. Outside, Tom stepped into the warm evening air. He felt lighter, not victorious, just done. Jason walked over and clapped him on the shoulder. Took a fire to get her out, huh? Tom nodded. Some people only learn when they lose something. The news traveled fast. By Monday morning, Wild Fern Lane was buzzing. Not with gossip but relief. Karen was no longer HOA president. Her iron grip had finally snapped. Undone not by conflict or protest, but by her own refusal to follow the rules she once weaponized. Tom didn't celebrate. He spent the morning sweeping ash off his porch. The smoky smell still clung to the air, even days after the fire. A reminder of how close things had come. Neighbors passed by and offered Nodsum with quiet thanks. One even brought a pie. He appreciated it, but something about it felt hollow, like a wound being covered before it had healed because Karen wasn't done. That afternoon, a letter arrived. Certified mail, official-looking envelope. It bore the letterhead of Barnes and Ritter Legal Services. The same firm her brother owned. Tom opened it slowly, half expecting it. Notice of intent to sue defamation, targeted harassment, and emotional distress. The letter blamed him for the public spectacle, accused him of false and malicious reporting, and claimed he had intentionally sabotaged her reputation with irreparable harm. Alina read the letter twice, then handed it back. She's bluffing. Tom wasn't so sure. Karen had always played by her own rules and, even without a title, she still had connections, but he'd kept records, photos, emails, fire marshal reports, all filed neatly in a folder on his computer called Accountability. 2 nights later, the fire marshal paid a visit. He was professional, direct. He interviewed Tom for 20 minutes, everything from the angle of the fire's origin to the Lexus blocking the corner. Could have been worse. The marshal said, she's lucky someone reported it fast. Real lucky it didn't spread to the next house. Tom just nodded. He didn't say much, but part of him knew exactly what that real lucky meant. Meanwhile, Karen stayed mostly out of sight. Her house was under repair, charred wood torn down, siding replaced, windows boarded up, but she wasn't gone. Every few days, her silver Lexus reappeared in the driveway, a little battered but still intact. She never waved at neighbors, never looked anyone in the eye, just slipped in and out like a shadow, until she showed up again this time. At the next HOA meeting, it was supposed to be routine. New board introductions, budget updates, a discussion about installing solar-powered street lamps. Then Karen walked in. She wore black again, hair perfectly ironed, a stack of papers clutched in one hand. Without invitation, She marched to the front of the room and turned to face the attendees. "I want to make a public statement." The room fell silent. "There has been a coordinated smear campaign against me. I have been targeted, disrespected, and publicly humiliated in front of my neighbors." The fire was a tragedy but not an excuse for a witch hunt. Jason, seated beside Tom, leaned in. "She's really doing this." Karen continued. "I have here," she held up the papers, shaking them for effect, "a list of violations by other homeowners, infractions I've chosen not to pursue over the years. Out of grace. But perhaps I was too lenient." Someone in the back laughed. She turned sharply toward the sound. "I am not the villain here. I was enforcing standards. Standards meant to protect this community. And in return, I've been blamed for an accident I didn't cause." Tom stood slowly. The room quieted again. "You blocked a fire lane." Karen's eyes snapped to him. "You filed complaints. Because you ignored every warning. I did what I thought was right for this neighborhood." "No. You did what was right for you." A long pause. Tom stepped forward and faced the room, not Karen. "No one here wanted a fight. We wanted fairness. We wanted safety. What happened to your house was awful, but it was preventable. That's the truth. And if you can't take responsibility for your own actions, then you shouldn't be the one setting rules." Karen's mouth opened. No words came. The new board president, a soft-spoken woman named Denise, stood and gently placed a hand on the mic. "That's enough, Karen." Karen froze. "We wish you well, but you're no longer part of this board. Please take your seat, or leave." For a moment, no one moved. Then Karen slowly stepped down. She took a seat at the back of the room, papers still in her lap, unread, and that's where she stayed. Outside, as neighbors filed out, the air felt different. "Cleaner." Jason shook Tom's hand. "Feels like we're finally getting our street back." Tom nodded. "Let's hope we keep it that way." 2 weeks passed. Karen stayed quiet, but her influence lingered like smoke. Some neighbors still kept their heads down, unsure whether peace had truly returned or if another storm was building. Tom kept busy. Between shifts, he helped Jason patch a leaning fence, gave lawn advice to a newly widowed neighbor, and quietly took down the HOA under review sign Karen had nailed near the neighborhood entrance 6 months earlier. Then, one morning, while cleaning up the cluttered home office, Tom stumbled across a manila envelope labeled Bylaw Amendment 14B, Emergency Access Clause. His heart skipped. He'd almost forgotten about it. Months ago, after Karen rewrote half the HOA handbook without consultation, the board opened a brief window for member-submitted amendments. Most people ignored it, figuring their suggestions would be dismissed or buried. But Tom submitted one anyway. Short, direct, tucked between 2 landscaping rules. Any board member whose actions directly obstruct or endanger emergency access shall be subject to immediate disciplinary review, and may be removed with a majority board vote if willful negligence is determined. Karen hadn't noticed it at the time. She had signed it into policy herself. It passed during a low-attendance meeting. Quiet, unchallenged, and now, suddenly, it had teeth. That afternoon, Tom met with Denise, the newly elected board president. They sat in her sunroom, legal pads between them, sipping weak lemonade. Tom slid the amendment across the table. "I think this matters now." She read it carefully. "You drafted this?" He nodded. "I never expected it to apply to anyone. I just knew something like this could happen. If someone made the wrong decision at the wrong time." Denise folded her hands. "You think this justifies a permanent removal? She's already been voted out. But if she challenges that vote or if she tries to return, this could prevent it." Legally, Denise didn't argue. Instead, she reached into a drawer and pulled out a folder filled with neighborhood statements, handwritten complaints, photos, copies of warning slips. "You're not the only one," she targeted. Meanwhile, Karen had started knocking on doors, not many, just the ones she thought she could still influence. People she had once done favors for waived minor violations, allowed short-term exceptions. At the Mitchell's house, she offered to help re-review their patio violation. At the Lewis's, she mentioned alternative leadership structures. Most listened politely, then closed the door. But she was building something. Or trying to. By week's end, she'd submitted a formal appeal to the board. Her letter claimed she was unfairly ousted due to emotional bias and community panic, and demanded a reinstatement vote under procedural grounds. She quoted from the HOA's own charter. What she didn't realize was what she had signed. The board held a special session that Thursday night. No public attendance, just members. Inside the community center's back room. Kieran arrived 20 minutes early. In a navy blazer, hair pulled back tight. Tom was invited as a witness, not a participant. He sat quietly against the wall, document in hand. When the meeting began, Denise started with protocol. We're here to review the formal appeal filed by former board president Karen Barnes regarding her removal after the July 14th incident. Karen stood. I respectfully request that my position be restored. The fire was an unfortunate accident, and I reject the claim that I acted with willful negligence. This has been a character assassination rooted in personal bias. Denise listened, without emotion. Then she opened Tom's envelope. Karen, on March 10th, you approved Bylaw Amendment 14B. Your signature is on this page. Karen leaned forward, squinting. I don't recall that. It passed by a 5-to-1 vote. Your vote tipped the majority. Karen paled. Denise continued. This amendment clearly states that any board member obstructing emergency access may be permanently removed if willful negligence is found. You're twisting my words. You parked in a designated fire lane multiple times, despite written and verbal warnings. The fire marshal's report states that your vehicle directly delayed access to the responding engine. Karen opened. Her mouth then stopped. The silence felt heavy. Cold. Denise looked around the table. All in favor of denying reinstatement, say aye. One by one, hands went up. Aye. Karen looked at Tom. Not with anger, with disbelief, like she couldn't understand how her own rule, signed by her own pen, had come back to close the door she thought would always stay open. She left without a word. Tom remained seated for a moment, fingers resting on the table's edge. Denise turned to him as the room cleared. That bylaw saved us more trouble than we'll ever know. Tom nodded slowly. Sometimes it's not about stopping the fire. It's about making sure it doesn't come back. By August, the heat began to break, and with it, the tension on Wild Fern Lane finally started to ease. The HOA board met regularly, and quietly. No more threats, no more last-minute emergency meetings. Just neighbors, trying to fix what had been broken for too long. They replanted the community flower bed Karen had replaced with gravel. They revised enforcement procedures to require photos and board signatures before fines could be issued. And most importantly, they designated 2 official fire lanes with fresh signage and reflective paint. One of them curved, right past Tom's house. The red curb was brighter than ever. Nobody parked there now. Tom spent less time fighting fires at home and more time being a dad again. Weekends were slower. He built a backyard tree swing for Ava, helped his son Jake assemble a model rocket, even started sleeping better without mentally running through worst-case scenarios. Karen's house, meanwhile, stood half-finished. Repairs had stalled. Contractors came and went, but progress was slow. Word spread she'd been denied multiple insurance claims due to preventable causes. Most days, the place just sat there, boarded windows, construction tape flapping in the breeze. She still lived there, but no one ever saw her in the yard. No more clipboards. No more Lexus parked illegally. If she left, it was quietly, through the garage, a ghost in her own domain. One evening, as golden sunlight spilled across the neighborhood, Tom found something in his mailbox. A letter, handwritten, no return address. He opened it cautiously, half expecting another accusation or threat, but it wasn't. Tom, you were right. I thought I was helping the neighborhood. I thought I was protecting something. But somewhere along the way, I started protecting only myself. What happened to my house? It wasn't just fire. It was a reckoning. Thank you for doing what I couldn't. I'm sorry, Karen. Tom read the note twice, then folded it carefully and slid it into the drawer with the others, the violation notices, the bylaw printouts, the fire marshal report. The file he once named accountability was now renamed closure. That weekend, the HOA hosted a small block party. It wasn't fancy folding tables, lemonade, someone's Bluetooth speaker playing 80s soft rock, but it felt good. Real. Tom stood by the grill, flipping burgers while Jason handed out plates. Ava ran by with her friends, shrieking with laughter. Alina sat beside the Mitchells, chatting about school supplies. No one talked about fines or citations or who had mowed their lawn, just music, laughter, plates full of food. Then toward the edge of the park, Tom saw her. Karen. Standing at the sidewalk, watching from a distance. Not with malice. Not even with resentment. Just quiet. She wasn't holding a phone, no clipboard, no sunglasses to hide behind. For a second, Tom considered walking over, saying something, a nod, a wave, but she turned and walked away before he could decide, and maybe that was enough. Later that night, as the last cars drove home and the music faded, Tom and Alina sat on the porch together. She leaned her head on his shoulder. "We made it through." He smiled. "Just barely. You think she'll try anything again?" Tom looked out at the darkened street. The fire lane gleamed in the moonlight, untouched. Double quotes. "No, I think she's tired." "You're not." He looked at her. "I was, but not anymore." They sat in silence for a while watching the neighborhood settle. A dog barked in the distance. Sprinklers kicked on across the street. Everything, for once, felt still. In the end, Karen didn't get revenge. She didn't get reinstated. She didn't even get her house finished, but she got something she hadn't expected, a consequence, and the neighborhood. It didn't get perfection. It got something better. Balance, a community that remembered what mattered. Not rules, not control, not power, but the people living beside you. And the fires you never see coming until they're right at your door.